Hi, I'm Art Caplan. I'm the chair of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU's Grossman School of Medicine in New York City. A lot of news, exciting news, somewhat hype news, as you'll see, I think, in a minute, about sickle cell disease. Some of you may remember back to medical school days, sickle cell disease is when an individual has both bad mutations that cause sickling of blood cells produced by bone marrow. Sickle cell trait is when you have only one of the mutations. And in fact, most biologists think sickle cell appeared as a way to combat malaria. People with the trait, far more common, they seem to have resistance against the parasite due to their partial sickling, occasional sickling of their blood cells. People with the disease have a horrible disease which blocks their circulation, causes extreme pain, and is really an awful thing to live with. Well, a lot of people have argued that there hasn't been much of a market, much of an interest in trying to chase down sickle cell disease cures. Some have even worried that maybe it's because it's a disease that almost exclusively impacts people of African American descent, both here and in Africa. But good news, there have been a lot of efforts underway in the biotech realm to find some way to genetically engineer the problem of sickle cell disease so that it doesn't impact those affected. And some breakthroughs have taken place. New techniques, CRISPR, where we have single gene edits going on, have shown that if you take bone marrow out of a individual with sickle cell disease, the bad form of sickle cell, put it in a lab, put in the little genetic scissors, and take out the gene that controls, if you will, blood formation by the stem cells in bone marrow, and get that out of the way, those cells revert to making fetal hemoglobin, which is great because it doesn't sickle. So then you knock out the rest of the bone marrow in the individual, bring it back, put in the new altered stem cells that are now making fetal hemoglobin, and you've got a person who, in theory, is cured. They don't have any more bone marrow in them that makes the bad sickling cells. They've only got these new altered cells in the bone marrow that makes fetal hemoglobin. Another company has a technique wherein they still use a viral vector to try and modify cells that are making blood cells, the stem cells, but they're putting in a message to say, don't make sickling cells. We're inserting a message that says, make normal blood cells. So there are two strategies. So this has all gotten a tremendous amount of attention. Sickle cell is a massive public health problem, both here and overseas. And a lot of announcements were made that we have a cure, we've got the treatment. There, I think we have to be a little careful in talking to patients about what's going on. Both of these techniques are still experimental. They've been put through clinical trials, and the FDA fast-tracked them and said they were very impressed with the benefits that both of the interventions obtained for people. However, we haven't had long-term follow-up. Both techniques sometimes can lead to situations where the genetic modifications are not confined to the cells you're trying to change, let's say bone marrow stem cells making blood cells, but they hit something else and they cause adverse events. Got to watch for that over time, seeing whether there's some later effects of genetic engineering that just weren't anticipated. Certainly those techniques that use viral vectors to try and modify cells have had some of that problem. So not ready to say yet, absolute, safe, great cure. Other major problem, the Casgevy intervention with CRISPR, 2.2 million estimate to pay for it. The Lyfgenia with the viral vector, 3.4 million estimate to pay for it. These are obviously huge hurdles for almost everyone in the US, and I would say even a bigger percentage unable to get access in Africa or elsewhere where sickle cell disease is a huge problem. Not only does it cost, but the techniques of getting the bone marrow out, changing it in the lab, destroying the remaining bone marrow, with chemotherapy, then putting everything back. It's months of very, very rigorous, tough, demanding interventions. A lot of places just don't have the capacity to use this kind of staged form of genetic engineering. So I'm not against, by any means, celebrating the first steps toward curing sickle cell disease, toward eliminating it as a blight on humankind. But I also think we're in baby steps. We shouldn't run around suggesting to people we've got the cure, we have the answer. Part of the answer isn't just it worked in a clinical trial. Part of the answer is it's affordable. Part of the answer is we can refine the techniques so we don't have to go through 4 or 5 separate stages involving all kinds of specialists and clinics to basically perform what is the world's most complicated bone marrow transplant. So we're not there yet in terms of, a cure for all, but we did make progress, and that's a wonderful thing. But we don't want people, patients who have sickle cell thinking, I saw in the news, it's done, and where is it for me? We can't say that right now. That kind of cure just isn't here yet. I'm Art Caplan at the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. Thank you very much for watching.